Welcome, dear friends, and thank you very much for joining this webinar, which will focus on the tremendous work of our Clinical Legal Education Center. Now, I wish we could meet face-to-face, that I could see you all in person, but since this is currently impossible, I'm really grateful for the opportunity of this Zoom get-together. The Faculty of Law has been my home now for something like 37 years. And I not only love the faculty, I'm extremely proud of it. And as you may know, according to the Shanghai International Ranking of Law Schools, we are ranked 33rd in the world and first in Israel. We're actually progressing in the ranking from being in the 36th place last year. So how has this academic year been? Let me elaborate a bit, but on the good things. So first, there was a record-breaking enrollment this year at the law school. The number of our first-year students went up by 24%. And happily, the enrollment for next year has not been adversely affected by the coronavirus crisis. And the candidates' interest in our faculty has not gone down at all. In addition, a university-wide survey of student satisfaction has found that the law faculty is ranked first in the university according to several parameters: general satisfaction from studying at the Hebrew University, general satisfaction from studying at the law faculty, and on the question whether you would recommend to a close friend to study at the Hebrew University. This year, we continue to recruit new faculty members, and actually our competition is not only with other Israeli law schools, but also with elite law schools abroad. For example, of the something like 70 entry-level appointment this year in the United States, 5 were graduates of our law faculty, and none were graduates from other Israeli law schools. Only 4 American law schools, like Yale, Harvard, and Stanford, had a larger number of graduates who were recruited this year. And 2 of these recruits were women graduates that we actually wanted to appoint ourselves, but they decided to accept offers from Columbia and UCLA. So although this, of course, is a bit regrettable, I think that this fact attests to the excellence of our legal education and to the high reputation of our graduates. Now, without doubt, one of the jewels in our crown is the Clinical Legal Education Center. It has always done impactful and important work and taught our students how social responsibility is an integral part of the legal profession. But as you will soon hear today, the Clinical Center is doing exemplary work during the coronavirus pandemic. It has quickly risen to the new challenges and extended its services to the community. So, without further ado, let me pass on the virtual microphone to the leaders of the clinic. And thank you all very much for your attention.
Thank you, Daphna. My name is Davidov. I'm the academic director of the clinics, and I'm going to say a few introductory words. And before I give the floor to the people who actually work and study in the clinics, who can tell you more about their actual experience. And my introductory words are going to be about the idea, just to explain the idea of legal clinics. Vardit, can you go ahead with the slides, one slide? So now, today there are legal clinics in every law school in Israel. We have 13 of them in Israel, and each one has an apparatus of legal clinics. And I think I can say comfortably, without exaggeration, that our own Clinical Legal Education Center is the best and leading clinical law center in Israel in every respect. What we do is we offer high quality legal aid to disadvantaged individuals and groups in Jerusalem and outside of Jerusalem as well. And at the same time, we give our students really high quality hands-on experience in doing practical legal work, which they can also learn in important ways from doing it. In general, each clinic includes usually 16 students, 16 students and a clinical attorney who is a lawyer specializing in community lawyering An academic advisor is one of the faculty members who specializes in the same field, who advises the clinic. And we usually have, or always actually, we have a regular theoretical class every week, but also every student is doing approximately 6 hours of field work, of legal work each week, supervised by the clinical attorney. And basically we have 4 goals, 4 main goals to this kind of legal education, clinical legal education. The first one, I would say, is to explain to the students the big difference between law on the books and law in action. We can try to talk in regular classes about the difference between the real life of the law and what they actually read in the law books and the case law, etc. But it's very difficult to teach that and explain. And in the clinics, they can actually get to experience that and discuss it with the clinical advisors in class. So just the ability to understand what law is in real life, how it works in real life, is becoming an essential part of their academic legal education. Secondly, we want to explain to the students, to teach the students about the law as a tool for social change, the potential of the law, but also the limitations of the law in this respect. And again, this is something that you can explain much better if they are actually able to learn it in practice, by trying to engage themselves in attempts to use the law as a tool for social change, and seeing the difficulties, but also the successes. So that's a great opportunity to teach that. Thirdly, I would say that, and Daphna also mentioned it, we're trying to instill in our students the idea that social responsibility and social sensitivity is an integral part of being a lawyer, of the legal profession. And we believe, and our talks with the graduate substantiate that it actually stays with them for a long time. And even if they go on to become, let's say, tax lawyers or specialize in corporate litigation, they still have some understanding of the harms that the law can create, but also the way that the law can help disadvantaged people from the experience in the clinics. Because in the clinic, they will get to meet clients that don't usually get to have a lawyer, and they won't meet them later in their career. And that helps to shape their understanding of the social responsibility of their profession. And finally, alongside the more regular education goals, we also want to use the clinics as an opportunity to advance social justice and access to legal services for underprivileged population as part of an understanding of the university, a university that is committed to the community around it, to the society around it. We don't want to be detached from the community in our ivory tower. We want to be part of it, and we want to help the community around us and our poor neighborhoods around Mount Scopus, where we see and the ability to use this apparatus to help them legally, and at the same time use that to teach the students some important lessons is really a privilege, and we think an important part of their education. Now I'd like to give the floor to Vardit, who is our managing director, but also a clinician, a clinical lawyer herself. She can tell you more about what we're doing in practice.
So hi, and thank you all for coming. I would like to talk to you a little bit about the scope of our activity, and I would like to demonstrate our 3 levels of activity by one short story. Let me tell you that we actually operate in 3 main levels. One of them is individual representation. Second is policy change through very diverse legal tools. And third is promoting knowledge, awareness, and so on. And I wish that you would, I wish to tell you the story of Hannah here, that I think that I think can explain very good the way we work. So Hannah is very impressive and strong woman. She's 32 years old, and she raises 6 children by herself. All of them are minor, and one of them is suffering from a severe mental disability. After many years of physical and mental abuse, she finally succeeded divorcing her husband. She worked only in a part-time job and lived for minimum income benefit. I think, as you can see from her biography, that she lived in a severe poverty. She came to us before the Corona crisis, and we helped her to receive a housing benefit that helped her pay the rent. But for some reason that we didn't know then, she didn't get the total sum that she was entitled to. And while we're trying to find out why, one day the deposit just stopped, and just in time to welcome the Corona. And this is something I would like to explain more, because I guess all of you saw 1 or 2 TV legal shows. I saw LA Law, so it can give you a clue how old I am. But in those shows, everything happened very, very fast. In only 1 episode, we know where is the problem. We write a very strong petition, usually overnight, and then in the next day, the judge rules in our favor. Well, in real life, and I guess not only in Israel, it takes a very long time to get a real response from the housing department. Our students, one of their hobbies is to take a screenshot of the time that they are waiting on the phone online. And just then we learn that the department consider her as a mother of 2 children until she will show them a divorce agreement that she doesn't have. After that, they told us that she must apply for renew of her entitlement, and they want her to do it physically. What's the problem? It's Corona time. So maybe they are open, but everything else was closed, including the National Insurance Institute or the family court. We, of course, understood back then that it's not only her problem, but everyone that will need to renew his or her entitlement, and that it's very urgent because Anna was facing eviction. So to make a very long story short, I can tell you that after a very firm letter, and I have to say with the help of our friend in the media, we succeeded to make a difference. Finally, the Ministry of Housing approved that request for new or renewal of housing benefit may be submitted remotely online. In addition, they also agreed that if you do not include the usually required document, they can accept the application only on declaration, and you will submit it later. So why I wanted to tell you this specific story, not because it's a success story and we love success story, we select success story, but because it showed a strong link between our individual representation and the policy change work. Also, I think this story show another aspect of our work, and this is what our students learn. The first thing they learn is how it is to walk on Anna's shoes, just for a while. They learn about her hopes, dreams, and difficulties. And it's changed the way they see people living in poverty. They learn about the right for a roof over your head, not only from the basic law, but also through the protocol of the Ministry of Housing, and the time that they were waiting online just to speak with an official that couldn't give them any real answer. And finally, they learn that they can use their skills and knowledge for good. And I think by this story, I think you can really get to know us. But if I want to give you some numbers behind this one story, I can give you that we are doing 600 cases like Hannah per year, individual legal aid. Also, I can say that we believe in individual legal aid because we believe it's the best tool to learn how the law works, and it's the best tool to know disadvantaged communities. We are also working on policy change. Just a second, something is not working here. We are also working on policy change, and all the time we're trying to find the policies that affect large group of people or communities. Every year we have between 35 or 40 policy change projects. Third level is our increasing knowledge. We are doing lecture to professional workers like social workers. We're doing lecture to the general public like single mothers. We are doing lecture to youth because we think we need to spread the knowledge. It doesn't need to be only in our offices. We in the next minutes, I want to show you just a little quick introduction to the clinic, to our clinic that will work next year. And I would like to add that if one of them is interesting for you, we would be more than happy to send you any more materials about those clinics. So this next year, we are going to have 8 clinics. The first one is the clinic for youth at risk right clinics, and the clinics promote the right of at-risk youth. She does that by legal aid representation, education and empowerment, and of course, policy change. Here in the picture, you can see our clinician, Shiran Reichenberg, and the petitioner in the Supreme Court after a very successful hearing about closing shelters. The second clinic is the International Human Rights Law Clinic, and the clinic works to promote and apply the international human rights law to Israeli reality and its legal system. In the picture, you can see our students in a tour to the military court in the West Bank. The next clinic is the representation of marginalized population. The clinic provide free legal aid, consultation, representation within Jerusalem marginalized population. Here in the picture, you can see the staff of the clinic, also me and Ohad. And we are very pleased after a very good hearing at the National Labor Court. The next clinic is the right of people with disability that promotes the integration of people with disability into society. We are focused on 2 main fields, higher education and employment market. Here in the picture, you can see our students in a meeting with the member of the National Student Leading Accessibility Organization, where they spoke about the difficulties that students with disability face on the academia. Our criminal justice clinic that provide free legal aid on all stages of criminal proceeding. This is a picture just a second before the hearing start. And the Innocence Project Clinic, I think you can guess by the name, that we are working to assist prisoners who have been wrongfully convicted. You can see here a picture from our Zoom class, which I think most of the semester, all of us look like that. Okay. The economic empowerment of women that promote and protect the economic right of women, focusing of women from disadvantaged group. Here you can see also Advocate Dana Ginosar and Rachel Benziman, our clinician in the clinic, submitting a petition that regarding the emergency regulation to the Supreme Court. And last is the diversity clinic that provide legal aid to individuals and groups that face discrimination due to their identity. This is another picture from a tour of our students in East Jerusalem. So just before I pass to Ohad Amar, I would like to speak just a few minutes on the program that we initiated when the Corona crisis started. We did a 3-level program. 3 is a lucky number, as you can guess, as you can see. The first level was manage all our existing clinical cases that we understand that in this period, it became even more crucial and more urgent. So this was the first level. The second level that Ohad will tell you a little bit more about it was opening two target Facebook group that called Social Justice Operation Group that worked in Hebrew and in Arabic, and there were where everybody can easily access and ask questions about his or her rights. And as you can see, we have now more than 500 friends in those groups. And our alumni, our graduate, volunteered to answer all the questions. It was really very proud moment for us to see our students took upon themselves the obligation to give free legal aid to everybody that was needed. The last level of our program was promoting policy change that was focused on the gap between the regulation and the needs as we saw them from our client and our communities. So I would like to finish with that, and Ohad Amar, you can continue from that spot. Thank you.
Hello, thank you for joining us. I'm Ohad, and I'm a clinical attorney at the Representation of Marginalized Communities, the Clinical Legal Education Center. I would like to talk about the COVID-19 crisis and how we faced it in our clinic. It was March 20, and I was in quarantine because of a short vacation, and I was not able to answer myself about questions about how to behave in the public area, what is the law says, what is the instruction says. Everything was so confused for me. And I'm a lawyer and I'm teaching students, and I don't know how to explain myself what is the regulation of the new COVID-19 crisis. So I was a little bit anxious and a little bit in anxiety, and then I decided to open two Facebook pages, one in Hebrew and one in Arabic. In 48 hours, we had 60 graduate students from my past years in the clinic that volunteered, and we decided to help people answering their questions, their individual questions, alongside translating the rules and the laws and the instructions that changed every day. The uncertainty and the unknown future was found people very lonely and very scared about the future and about how to behave, about how to follow the rules and the instructions. And we decided that the strong tool of Facebook, providing us, helping lots of people and answering questions. As Vardit says, we have more than 5,000 people in this group today, and we have more than 60 volunteers, both in Arabic and in the Hebrew pages. I would like to share the screen now for a short time, just for you to see how it looks like. Yes, we have a logo, and people just here asking for our, 1 second, why it's empty. This is the Arabic page. And as you can see, it's in Arabic, but it's also in Hebrew, where people are asking us the questions, and our volunteers here helping them with their solutions, and basically just translating the rules and the instruction for them, providing them with the legal aid that they need. Alongside the groups, we led a campaign because the clinic is specializing with social security benefits law. We knew at the beginning of the crisis that people who dismissed from their jobs or sent to unpaid leaves due to the crisis are generally entitled to a very low unemployment payment. In fact, if they already receive other welfare benefits, then these benefits are automatically reduced once they start receiving unemployment. This means overall, their income is significantly decreased. For example, I made an example for you. This is Miriam. Miriam is 35-year-old single mother with 3 children, 3 minor children. She lives in Jerusalem, and she works in an office as a cleaning. She helps with. Sorry, 1 second. Her monthly salary is about 3,000 shekels per month, and she gets alimony from her social security in about 3,000 shekels. Total income is about $1,680, and she gets alimony from the social security because her husband is not paying the alimony himself. During the crisis, and because of the rule that she cannot have 2 benefits from the social security, one benefit is reduced from the other benefits, and now she is getting unemployment pay as about 2,400 shekels, and alimony from social security about 1,000 shekels, approximately $980. This was the story of 70,000 people in Israel, people with disabilities, single mothers, or people with lower income. The clinic led a campaign with other organizations, including writing a position paper to the Knesset and to the Minister of Labor, Social Affairs, and Social Services. We had introduced amendments to the existing law to prevent this miscalculated situation hurting the most poor people in our society. Recently, the bill passed in the Knesset, helping 70,000 families earning both benefits. And this was one example for the campaigns and the problems that the clinic held during the COVID-19 crisis.
So thanks, Ohad. We would like you to hear also from Ariel Elkayam, one of our students. So Ariel, the stage is yours.
Thank you, Vardit. Hi, good evening, everyone. Sorry, this is unexpected, but this is COVID-19 and Zoom meetings. My name is Ariel, and I'm a second-year law student here in the faculty, and I work within the clinic for the rights of the youth and children at risk. And I'm here today to speak to you a little bit about the perspective that I have as a student on the kind of work that we do, and tell you a little bit how it looks like from our end. And this is the time of the year where new students apply to the clinical center. And I've received a few phone calls from students asking about this line of work. And I always started by answering that for me, this is really the best thing that happened to me with my studying here, and that I'm so lucky and fortunate to get accepted to this program and to get to do this work, and especially now during COVID-19 crisis. And I think law school, most of the times it's very busy, and it could get a little competitive. And most of the work that you do, you work very hard to achieve the highest grades that you can get. And in the end of the day, it's a goal that it's towards yourself. You try to achieve more by yourself, for yourself. And I think the most prominent thing about the clinical center is that you do teamwork in order to achieve something for other people. And it's a great thing because it's also very busy, but it enables us to really take the time, and for many hours in every week, most of the times more than 6 hours to do. And this is because it's great and it's fun and we enjoy it. It's not because anyone tells us you have to get the job done. It's our initiatives. So we're very lucky to get to do this kind of work within our own responsibilities for ourselves towards the school. And so this is something that is great. And the teamwork is present in a lot of different areas. So we have our teammate that we work with, and my teammate became one of my best friends which is a present for life, as we say. And also the work that we do with our clinician, that we become very close, especially during COVID-19. I think we spoke more than I talked to my family. And there's work that we do together with other clinics. And just this week, we finished working on a joint project with Ohad students, trying to support a family with aid for housing. And also even other clinics in the country. I was fortunate enough to volunteer and do something with the clinic in Haifa that petitioned to the Supreme Court. And this is all things that I would not have been able to do if I wasn't a student in the clinical center, and that really gave me as an individual a sense of belonging. And I don't know what I'll do next year. You could see before the crisis, just alumni coming in to the clinical center. And in the beginning, we didn't understand what they're doing there, but I understand now how it's hard to let go. And I wonder how it's going to work with Zoom. But I'm sure I was glad to hear that the people running the Hamal, that Ohad is doing the operational center, are all alumni. It makes perfect sense. I really understand that. And I think watching our clinicians is really something that they are very modest, so they won't say it about themselves, but this is the line of work that they give everything to it, and it's so much more than just work for them. And just watching them do what they do it's an inspiration, and I think it makes us more connected, and it makes us believe in ourselves that we can, even on our own, try to achieve things and try to change. And I think that's something that's very special. And I can't speak about the work that we do without addressing the effect of COVID-19 on the children and the youth at risk that we work with in the clinic. And I think regardless of how complicated the regulations are to understand, it's just the quarantine on its own, the regulation that's saying that you can't leave the house, created an impossible situation, especially for youth and children at risk, that and especially the ones that are homeless, because they just didn't have anywhere to go. And some of them that are homeless don't have anywhere to go. And other, I'm sorry, I see the questions and I'll address them in the end, if I have the permission. And so the other ones, if they go back to their houses, then they are faced with sometimes families that are abusive, and it's really an impossible situation. So they either stay in the streets, and then other things start happening because they get fined by the policemen without the country having a housing solution for them. So for one instance, we helped a client that was in financial debt before the crisis, and her mother kicked her out of the house in the middle of the crisis when the regulation said that you couldn't step outside more than 50 meters away. And you can read the fine that she received from the policeman. And she says there, "My mother kicked me out of the house. I have nowhere to be." And yet she received a fine on the sum of 500 shekels. And the same the following day, because she didn't have a housing solution. And for us, I was very glad that we could try and assist and support her writing and submitting the request to cancel this fine. And this is something that has happened countless of times since the beginning of the COVID crisis. And other examples is that I think we see an incline in the number of children and youth that get arrested, not necessarily for COVID regulations, but just generally other things that they do, that I must say that if I was the one doing them, I would not have get arrested. There is a huge privilege involved in those cases. And so we see an incline, and they don't have parents that want to be involved with them in many cases. And the Criminal Procedure Act for children says that the child has the right to have a parent with him in the investigation. And so you see young children that just don't receive the right of someone, a grown-up, being with them in this room, because they don't have anyone that wants to be in the room. So we try to help and connect between some of the people that we know from our field work that knows those children and the police, through contacting the Department of Justice and making phone calls and just using people that we know. I think in the first time it was a student of the criminal clinic that worked the same day in the operational center of the Department of Justice, because this is her job, and she helped us reach and find make sure that there's an attorney that's helping and assisting the child that was arrested, and countless of other instances. Our clinician gave, and we supported her with giving advice before investigations when there wasn't an attorney, a defense attorney that was appointed by the Public Defense Office. And so I think these are just a few examples, and if there is time, I could answer other questions.
Wow, Ariel, the passion that we hear from you is overwhelming, and I think it's wonderful that your clients have an advocate like you that really seems to care very deeply. I want to open this up to a few questions. Our first question is from the chairman of our Board of Governors, Dan Schlesinger. I'm going to allow him to talk and ask him to ask the question directly. Dan, can you hear me?
I hear you, Francine. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. Thank you. And thank you all for this wonderful presentation. My question was about volunteer pro bono help from Israeli lawyers. Here in the United States, we lawyers have an ethical obligation to provide pro bono assistance to providers of legal assistance, legal aid organizations, clinics like yours. And the last time I talked to some of my Israeli colleagues about this, it didn't seem like there was as much of a culture of providing pro bono assistance in Israel as there is in the United States. I'm just wondering, to what degree are the clinics assisted by volunteer help from Israeli lawyers?
I can maybe try to answer that. I think that it's becoming more common to do pro bono work in Israel, but not to an extent as in the US, and it's certainly not an obligation, it's not an ethical obligation. But people do some pro bono work, and as part of that also we get some, every once in a while we are approached by prominent lawyers who are offering to help us, and sometimes we do get some assistance in really new and challenging cases from lawyers. Vardit, you want to give an example? But it's not very common, I have to say. But it's maybe it happens. Yes, we do have an interest from the lawyers, and it happens every once in a while.
I can add that actually a few years ago, the Israeli bar saw us as a threat for their clients. They were afraid that we will take all of their work, and this didn't happen. And in the last few years, our relationship are better. Now, actually, we are doing a case that deals with tort law, with one of the best tort laws lawyer in the country, with one of the faculty member, and I think it's very interesting, and it's very it's a very interesting way to work and learn and to be supported by each other.
Do we have any more questions?
They're so overwhelmed. So
Well, if there aren't any more questions, I will ask you to perhaps provide a few more examples from some of the other clinics that you represent. We have 8 clinics that you'll be. Oh, wait, we do have another question. 1 minute. Randa Mar is asking if there is a way for American lawyers to assist with any of these projects. Vardit, I think that you're muted.
Yeah, I saw. I don't think of any way just right now, but we can try to be creative. I don't think we have a way. We didn't try it before, I can say that. But because you need to know the Israeli law, you need to be able, we do everyday job of a lawyer. We write in Hebrew, we read in Hebrew, we represent in Hebrew. So I think it's very difficult, but we can be creative and think of new ways to challenge ourselves.
Is there a way that you can give us a few more stories from the field, please? We heard Ariel's and it was almost, it was heart-wrenching.
Yeah, so just a second, I will try maybe to upload the presentation again. Oh, you know what, we don't need it. Okay, so we have 8 clinics, and each clinic deals with the specific group of people, specific population, and each clinic has its specific cases. I think one example that I love to give, because it doesn't speak on one specific case, is what we do on marginalized population. And what we do on our clinic is follow the money. And in this clinic, we are working on realization of rights. And every year we're trying to count how much money our clients gain from our work, how much money they save or get from National Insurance Institute benefit or housing benefit. And each year we get approximately 1 million shekel. And why do I love to give this example? Because it helps us to understand what do we do. Because it's money that our clients deserve. It's not something that they get as a present. This is money that the Israeli law gives them, but they actually need a lawyer just to help them to get to their benefit. And I think it's a very sad story, actually, because I wish they wouldn't need us so much. I would like to give you another example. In a few days, we are going to submit an application for retrial for a person that sits already 12 years in prison on a murder that he claims that he wasn't involved at all. And it's really powerful and very strong experience for the students that were involved in investigating the case, looking for new evidence, writing the request, the very long and complicated request. And we really hold our fingers, because in Israel, there's only 32 cases of retrial that were accepted. And I see that we have a new question, so maybe I will pause for a second to give the chance for people that want to ask questions.
Yes, I can try to answer the...
Oh, I wanted to let Ruth ask her question directly. Ruth, I've given you permission to speak.
Okay. Hi. I was just wondering if Israel has any laws regarding accessibility for people with disabilities to public buildings, education, and employment. In the US, we have the Americans with Disabilities Act that was fought for 40 years, and but now it does provide access.
Yes, so, we do have, I can try to answer that. We do have a law that was enacted in 1998. so about 20 years ago, and it was modeled after the ADA, the American ADA. So it has a lot of similarities, but in terms of the actual application of it in practice, there's still a lot of gaps. So, and this is actually our disability clinic is one of the leading organizations, leading powers, I guess, in Israel, that is trying to challenge all kinds of instances in which the law is not actually being applied. But the law on the books is very nice, very similar to the American law. We're fighting alongside others to try to make it a reality. There has been a lot of advances in the last, I guess, 3 or 4 years. So there's an improvement. Also in the legislation, it was improved. But there's still a lot of work in that respect.
Okay, we have one more question from Mary Simiu. Mary, can you tell us where you're from and ask your question?
Thank you. Thank you for having me. My question will be, how do you ensure that your legal aid services are legal of political interferences? And then the second question is, are your legal services available and accessible to the refugees, especially because they're underprivileged and they might not be able to enjoy the, the rights of an Israeli citizen? Thank you.
I can try to answer the first. I'll start with the second question. We do in the International Human Rights Clinic, we do work a lot with refugees and citizenship claims. So we're doing our best to help. We're certainly working with people in East Jerusalem, for example, as well. Well, we are very close actually to our campus, even though they do not have Israeli citizenship, and we're trying to help them as well. The question about political interference is a really challenging one. I guess this is maybe I can use this opportunity to mention that the clinics are not funded by the government at all. So we rely entirely on donations, and we are happy for any help, because all the clinical lawyers, they get their salaries from donations from friends of the clinics and the Hebrew University. And one of the reasons, I guess, that it's not funded is that it's not seeing, I guess, the government doesn't see it, or the university, the Malag, the body who supervises the universities, doesn't see it as a standard part of the education, but also because they are worried perhaps a little bit that this is used to challenge the government in some ways. Of course, we're not interested in specifically in challenging the government, but by working for change, for improvement of the law, etc., we often petition against the government. So it's sometimes seen as it's not political. I wouldn't say political, but I guess the government is sometimes uncomfortable with it. I don't know if that's what you meant by political interference, but this is what we'll sometimes have to be sensitive to. Claims that we might be seen as too critical of what the government is doing. We're trying our best not to appear that way.
Ohad, do you perhaps have something to add as a member of the Clinic for Marginalized Populations? It sounds like that was part of the question as well.
I think everything is related to politics. Politics is the power in the society, and as we see in our clinic and in other clinics, people who cannot provide lawyers cannot be access to the courts and to earn their rights. And this is a political question. How can we provide people with their rights without the necessity of a lawyer and court? We can see that it's unprofitable for lawyers to deal with social security cases or with labor law cases for people who earn lives with a very low income. So in that case, I think that once we are positioned in Jerusalem and providing people access to justice, we are challenging the system and we are challenging the profession of lawyering here in Israel, because no one else will take these cases to court if we are not taking it to court.
Thank you. Ruth, I see that you raised your hand. Did you have a follow-up question?
Yes, I do. I'm just so impressed with the work that you're doing in the clinic. And I understand that in many of the cases you're going to the courts and filing appeals or requests, but Ariel and others have mentioned that you're working on changing rules and that you've managed to change rules. So in the Israeli system, if you want to change a law or a rule, how do you go about that? I know in the US how that works, but how would you go about that in Israel? That was my question.
Yeah, so you can't do it alone. You can't do it alone. You need a strong coalition that will help you pass in the law. There are many stages and each case is different from another, but basically we are trying to do a very good research on the necessity of the law. And then we write the bill and we have a strong connection to Knesset members that are interested in our work and would like to work with us. And we find a strong coalition of member Knesset that wants to promote our bill or our law. And then we work on very diverse tools. We are working with the media. The media is very important if you want public awareness, if you want to help us promote the bill. And we are trying to convince as many of the member Knesset and the official that are working on the relevant field. And sometimes we succeed and sometimes we don't. Ohad gave you example of a huge success in the Corona crisis. And we really hope that we will have more successes like that. I hope that answers your question, but if you want if you want me to elaborate on other aspects, okay.
I can maybe add that sometimes we also use legal tools to try to challenge, let's say, the regulations that we feel that illegal, that are unconstitutional perhaps, or otherwise are not in line with the legislation. Maybe there are internal rules or other regulations, so we can draft a letter. Sometimes we need to go to court, and sometimes it is solved before the court. But using legal arguments, we can. I'm not talking about primary legislation usually, but lower regulations. We can sometimes bring about change as well.
I have an example.
Yes, go ahead.
An example about you can change the law with the Knesset and you can change the law with the court. But a few years ago, we opened a legal aid center in the eastern part of Jerusalem, helping Palestinians to earn their rights. And we focused on the unemployment office, where the instructions and the laws was unclear to the clerks in the office. For 3 years, we wrote dozens of petitions to the court challenging the unemployment office to follow the rule, to follow the law and follow the instruction where there were blanks in the law, we showed the court and the lawyers of the unemployment office that they need to follow the rule and they need to follow the law, and where there is no law, they need to have access to justice and providing people with a decent service. That's how we changed after a few years of struggle in the eastern part of Jerusalem. Unemployment office is 300 meters from the university, and we were there like once a week appealing against them until the lawyer of the unemployment office decided to change the way they work and to take the law and the instruction very seriously. And now we have less problems that it's not solved completely, but we are there just to make sure that people will follow the law.
Thank you, Ohad. And I just want to say, I don't think that we can find a more concrete example of Tikkun Olam than the example of this clinical legal education center. Really hands-on work, doing the most difficult things for the most underserved communities. And I thank you all for participating tonight, and I thank you all so much for the work that you do. I want to turn this over to Daphna to wrap up for the evening.
Sorry. Not enough practice on Zoom. I just wanted to say that I thank you all for joining. And for me, it's always very moving and uplifting. I always have, I'm very, very happy after I have one of the meetings or events of the clinics, because although many of them are sad stories, people that have very, very hard lives, I mean, the fact that we can actually do something, even if it's a little something, to show them not only to give them their rights, but to show them some kind of sense of solidarity about caring about other people. It's absolutely terrific. And I really am sorry that when I went to law school, there was no such thing as the clinical legal education. It was something we just had, the regular black letter kind of legal studies. So this is a wonderful experience for our students and for our alumni, and for, of course, for the people who get the advantage of the legal aid. And I really think that in these days, it's not only that there is more work to be done. I mean, there's always a lot of work to be done, and not everyone can help. But I think in this area of the corona pandemic, there is especially a lot of things that need to be done. And as Guy said, the clinics depend on external funding that has to be raised every year from scratch, from zero. And if any one of you feels that he can, pitch in and help a bit, would be really most grateful. So thank you all for joining.